Good evening. Welcome to CSL Wednesday Night Book Shorts, where tonight we will be reading out of Being in Balance by Wayne Dyer. It's one of his mini books, of course, and it's kind of a nice little gift book with a padded hardcover, nice pictures and stuff on the inside. Let's see. So it's kind of gifty. And it says, Being in Balance, 9 Principles for Creating Habits to Match Your Desires. Creating habits to match your desires, okay? So Wayne Dyer is really a down-to-earth kind of guy that really can make sense to your, mind that wants answers. So let's listen to what he has to say. I'm reading chapter 7 right now. Which is called Fighting Any Adverse Condition Only Increases Its Power Over You. And he says, balancing your desire to live in a peaceful world with messages of evil continually bombarding you. Wow. Okay, so let's see. So first of all, there's a couple of quotes. The first one by Confucius says, "To see and listen to the wicked is already the beginning of wickedness." And from the Quran, "Whatever good you have is all from God. Whatever evil, all is from yourself." Okay, so Wayne Dyer says, on a daily basis, we hear from a variety of sources that our world is turned upside down. Evil exists everywhere, and terrorism is a way of life. People seem determined to kill each other in increasingly violent ways, while young children are recruited to become suicide bombers in the name of God. Radio, television, and online news outlets dispense an endless cascade of man's inhumanity to man. Family members gone berserk, teenagers on killing rampages in their schools, and terror cells rocking Earth's consciousness everywhere, from train stations to places of worship. I could go on describing the ways in which we're continually bombarded by the media, but I'm going to stop because I'd be violating the central premise of this chapter. The point I'm making here is that we seem to live in a totally out of balance world where our desires for feeling peaceful are challenged by the myriad non-peaceful energies that are considered newsworthy. But we do have a choice in this matter. And we can choose to realign ourselves energetically with our desire to live in this world peacefully, regardless of what's going on around us, and in spite of the non-peaceful energy we're so often subjected to. We can begin to decide to maintain a tranquil existence within ourselves, even when others promote fear, anger, and hatred about this planet. After all, a massive collective effort throughout the history of humanity, a massive collective effort throughout the history of humanity by those in positions of authority has taught individuals whom to fear and, even worse, whom to hate. If we'd been alive in America back in the 1750s, we'd have been told that it was our patriotic duty to hate the French as well as the Native Americans. 25 years later, we'd have been told that it was okay to stop hating the French, but that we were obliged to hate the British. And now fast forward 87 years, and if we lived in the South, we'd be told to hate those in the North, and the Northerners likewise were required to hate Southerners, even if they were related by blood. And by the way, it was no longer a requirement that we hate the British. Now move ahead 34 years, and it was necessary to hate the Spanish, plus it was acceptable once again to love those who lived in a different latitude in our town, in our own country. 20 years later, it was fine to love the Spanish, but compulsory to hate the Germans. And in just a few decades, the Japanese would be added to our required hate list. Then it became all right to stop hating the Germans and Japanese, but we had to hate communists, be they North Korea or North Vietnam, several years later. In other words, there's always been a collection of people being added to or deleted from the hate inventory. For a long time, we were required to hate Russians, then Iranians. We could love the Iraqis, but only for a short time. Then we reversed those on this hate list. We were obliged to hate the formerly loved Iraqis, and it was okay to love the Iranians that only 10 years before we were told to hate. Then came the Taliban and even more obscure categories such as terrorists, whom we used to be required to love, and insurgents, whoever they are now, became mandatory targets of our hate. On and on goes this litany of hate. The faces change, but the message remains. We're told whom to hate, never for a moment recognizing that the enemy we're supposed to hate isn't a nationality. The enemy is hatred itself. Okay, another little subchapter says, removing yourself from all hate lists. Author Egendorf, writing in Healing from the War, he offers this advice that's pertinent to our efforts to rebalance our life and to live peacefully. Okay, so he says, only together will we create a culture that supersedes the cycles of battle and retreat. Not through our fear of war, but through mastering a superior way to live. The seed of this culture is the determination within individuals, and then small groups and communities, to devote our lives to the greatest vision of all time. Not to wait for a savior one day to deliver us, not to wait for a government to pass truly just laws, not to wait for a revolution to right the wrongs for a cruel world, and not to mount a crusade to overpower some distant source of evil beyond ourselves. Each of us, singly and with all the others, is answerable for creating joy throughout the way our lives unfold, here and now. And once this purpose becomes primary, we can turn to the endless job of bringing well-being to others, justice and integrity to our government, and instituting constructive programs for change here and elsewhere. When inspired in this way, we don't have to wait for the final outcome before we're nourished. There is no finer way to live or die. Wow. Okay, these are Wayne Dyer's words again. The words that speak loudest to me in this sagacious observation are, each of us, singly and with all the others, is answerable for creating joy through the way our lives unfold here and now. I suggest that the number one thing you can do singly to create joy is remove hate from your inner consciousness. This may be surprising, but let it sink in. Those who hate war are just as responsible for the presence of war as those who hate their assigned enemies and fight to kill them. Those who hate crime are part of the crime problem. Those who hate cancer make cancer a foe and become part of the cancer problem. Like everything else in this book, the secret to balancing life is not necessarily to change your behavior as much as it is to realign yourself and create a culture that supersedes the cycles of battle and retreat. Whenever we use force to resolve our disputes, we instantly create a counterforce. This is largely responsible for the never-ending cycles of war that have defined human history. Force, counterforce, more force, and the battles go on, generation after generation. This is true within you as well. A thought of hate creates a thought of revenge, and then more hateful thoughts in response. And the real problem is that these thoughts of hatred and revenge begin to define your existence. They become your point of attraction. Your initial desire to live peacefully in a world that the media reports has gone berserk is a spiritually balanced desire. In order to materialize your desire, you must extend thoughts that match the energy of that desire. Thoughts of hate will not blossom into your desired peacefulness. And the reason has been repeated throughout this book. You attract more and more of that which you desire to eradicate. Breaking the cycle. You can detach yourself from thoughts of hatred despite the news from the media driven by profit mentality. The more you buy into hatred, the more those who sell the messages benefit. But you can decide that you'll be an instrument of joy. So how does an instrument of joy react to a cacophony of loud, disturbing news? If you're in balance, you're most likely able to access the place of love and peace that you are. You remember your mission, and you desire to be in balance and peaceful by asserting that even though millions of others elect to be in hatred, this is simply not your calling. You didn't decide to incarnate into a world where everyone has the same vision. Your thoughts turn to, I am a divine creation. I choose to stay connected to this divinity in all of my thoughts and in all of my actions. Then, what do you do when you hear about people blown up by terrorists or any other actions that are decidedly non-peaceful? Here's what I remind myself to think and say. I want to feel good. I didn't sign up for war or warlike thoughts. I'm an instrument for peace, and I send peaceful, loving thoughts to those people and places in the world who seem to need it so desperately. I refuse to collaborate with the energy of hatred anymore, anywhere, anytime. The alternative to this kind of peaceful thinking is anger, hatred, and fear, which aligns perfectly with the energy that is so distasteful, and your immediate reaction is to then seek revenge. A counterforce is established, and you're aligned with the same energy of hate that caused you to feel less than peaceful. What if, in response to suicide bombers, we tended the injured and grieved the dead, but didn't publicize the tragedy with news reports? What if no one reported the consequences of this kind of violence? No news reports, no film. What if we chose to respect the pain of the relatives and survivors by not commercializing pictures of their grief? What if this kind of thinking surfaced when these acts of hatred took place? The people who perpetuate these incidents are acting out of their own thoughts of hatred, hoping that others will respond in kind and that hatred will continue unabated. But if it was no longer news, if no one gave them attention, their acts would necessarily have to come to a halt. You personally can be one of those people who stubbornly refuses to add low-energy thoughts to the hate you observe. By doing so, you can contribute to the demise of hatred. You can act singly to create more joy by steadfastly refusing to be hateful in any of your thoughts. You break the cycle of violence in the world not by hating violence, but by being your own instrument of peace. Choosing to experience peace by focusing on what you are for. Okay, choosing to experience peace by focusing on what you are for. The passage from the Holy Quran at the beginning of this chapter states that whatever good you have is all from God, and whatever evil, all is from yourself. Having accessed your higher energy, you can process the out-of-balance events that humans create from a perspective of God realization. There's no hate in God. There's only love. You can experience peace by balancing all that transpires around you with God consciousness. There's nothing that requires you to react to evil doing with a non-spiritual mental response. You have a choice to put your mental energy, there's a picture over these words, it makes it hard, sorry. You have a choice to put your mental energy into what you desire, and in doing so, create a new world. Let me tell you how I choose to respond to the bombardment of messages that focus on what's wrong in the world. First, I remind myself that for every act of evil, there are 1,000,000 acts of kindness. I choose to believe that people are essentially good, and that by staying in this belief system, I help bring more of this consciousness to fruition. When enough of us take on this holy notion that whatever good we have is all from God, we'll learn to live collectively in this peaceful awareness. Second, I know for certain that no amount of hatred in my heart will ever bring peace. Hatred will only contribute more to the presence of those human-made destructive energies. So I choose to place my attention on what I am for, and on my feeling good or feeling God. I support peace, not war. As Albert Einstein once remarked, I am not a pacifist. And I am not only a pacifist, but I'm a militant pacifist. Nothing will end war unless the people themselves refuse to go to war. I, as a recipient of the Einstein Award from the Albert Einstein College of Medicine of Yeshiva University, would humbly add, and unless people refuse to ever think warlike thoughts. In Long Walk to Freedom, Nelson Mandela wrote, "To make peace with an enemy, one must work with that enemy, and that enemy becomes one's partner." I know that we are all partners with each other as children of God. This is how I think, and when I see footage of a world that's in disarray because many have forgotten this, I still choose to feel God's presence in me and know that we'll ultimately learn to live this way collectively. But it begins with each of us refusing to be instruments of non-peace in all of our thoughts and consequently all of our behaviors. Adolf Hitler's designated successor, Hermann Goering, is quoted in Nuremberg Diary as saying, "Why, of course, the people don't want war, but after all, it is the leaders of the country who determine the policy, and it is always a simple matter to drag the people along. Whether it is a democracy or a fascist dictatorship or a parliament or a communist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them that they are being attacked and denounce the pacifists for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same way in any country." I choose not to be one of those people who are dragged along. It's Wayne Dyer again. I refuse to be brought to the bidding of any leader who attempts to convince me that my beliefs in peace make me unpatriotic. When an unidentified Pentagon official was asked why the U.S. military censored graphic footage from the Gulf War, he responded, "If we let people see that kind of thing, there would never again be any war." Well, that is my goal, to live in a world where warlike thoughts are impossible because we're placing all of our mental energy on what we are for rather than what we hate. Former President Dwight Eisenhower, who was also commander of the Allies in World War II, once remarked, "Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies, in the final sense, a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. This is not a way of life at all in any true sense." This is a call to get ourselves and our world in balance. Peace demands heroic thinking and a purity of conscience. When I remember this, I stay within my personal desire to live a God-realized life. Third, when I see and hear evil, I remind myself, I didn't sign up to come here to be a part of hatred. While others maybe have, I'll remember to stay with the inner sense of peace that calls to me. And I'll surround those who behave in evil ways with the same light energy. I simply refuse to go to war in my thoughts. I choose to be a beacon of light for the places of darkness that are bereft of this kind of illuminating energy. Finally, as the dispatches of violence continue to come my way, I remind myself over and over again that we have a choice in how we respond to all of this. I know that by feeling hatred in response to hate, I only contribute to the presence of hatred in the world. And I also bring myself to a much less God-realized place. As an ancient Chinese proverb tells us, if you decide to pursue revenge, you'd better dig 2 graves. I know that we have the choice to put out energy into showing our love for God by loving each other. And I know that I have a choice to see what's good about the world rather than what has gone wrong. When those communiques of violence and hatred come streaming toward me, I push the mute button or even the off button, and I recall what the Dalai Lama once said. Compassion and love are not mere luxuries. As the source of both inner and outer peace, they are fundamental to the continued survival of our species. Those are extremely valuable words describing our need to be in balance. I stay balanced on this dimension of being in a peaceful world by saying them over and over again. I now know for certain that I'm obliged to stay in a consciousness of compassion and love, not only to maintain my own balance, but to help ensure the continued survival of our species. There can be no greater calling. Okay, so next I would like to read chapter 8. It's called Love is What's Left Over When Falling in Love Fades Away. Balancing your desire for love with feelings of not having enough love. And 2 quotes at the beginning. One is from Tagore. He who comes to do good knocks at the gate. He who loves finds the gate open. And this from D.H. Lawrence. Those that go searching for love only make manifest their own lovelessness. And the loveless never find love. Only the loving find love, and they never have to seek for it. So Wayne Dyer says, love is something that we desire, and why not? The more love we receive, the more we feel loved, and the better we feel. Feeling good, or God, is feeling balanced and in perfect harmony with our source of being. Obviously, then, one of our highest and most fervent wishes is to be the recipient of an endless flow of love. So what creates this huge imbalance between what we desire and how we feel? There's irony involved in the correction of this imbalance, and the observation of D.H. Lawrence in the opener spells it out perfectly. As with all the major imbalances I've written about in this book, rebalancing always involves an energy realignment that isn't achieved simply by memorizing strategies or by adopting new behaviors. Rather, it's essential to know what kind of vibrational energy patterns you're sending to your desires. In this case, your desire is to feel good by having as much love in your life as you can balance. This can't be accomplished by demanding it or by seeking it from outside of yourself. The key part of the quotation from Lawrence is, only the loving find love, and they never have to seek for it. Later in this chapter, I'll return to these significant words. However, before looking at ways to implement this concept into your life, I want to explore Lawrence's assertion that the loveless never find love. If there's too little love, does that mean, at least in Lawrence's interpretation, that we're loveless? Let's examine this notion. Subtitle, The Loveless Factor in This Imbalance. If you're not receiving the love you desire, it seems like a pretty good idea to explore what's creating this state. Obviously, most of us want to place the blame for lovelessness on something external to ourselves. That's a waste of time and energy, but it often feels good because blame seems to alleviate the pain, even if only briefly. However, blame energy only helps you remain out of balance, whether you're blaming yourself or someone else. Being in balance is centered around the premise that you receive in life what you're aligned with. By now, you must have read it enough times to know that I mean that you get what you think about. While you may justify your loveless state with thoughts of being unappreciated or or choose to see the whole world as an unloving place, the fact remains that you're experiencing the imbalance of not feeling good because you don't have enough love in your life. Waiting for others to change or for some kind of shift to take place in the world to restore you to balance won't work without your commitment to take responsibility for changing your way of thinking. If that's left to others, you'll turn the controls of your life over to someone or something outside of you, and that's a prescription for disaster. The point I want to emphasize here is that if feelings of being shortchanged in the love dimension are a part of your life, then it's because you've aligned your thoughts and behaviors with lovelessness. How do you do that? By failing to match your desire for love with thoughts that harmonize with this powerful desire. For example, I've never been able to sustain a loving relationship. I'm not really attractive enough to have someone love me in the way I want to be loved. People are cruel and take advantage of me. I see hostility and anger everywhere. This is an uncaring world with a shortage of love. All of these thoughts, and others like them, create a point of attraction that's way out of balance with the desire to receive abundant love. You attract into your life precisely what you're thinking about, and you're inadvertently joined Club Loveless with a membership that includes a majority of the entire population. That is, people who feel shortchanged about the amount of love that's failing to pour into their empty hearts. All of this is reversible by shifting your alignment and removing the resistance to the fulfillment of your desire for love. You begin by ending your search for love. Subtitle, No More Searching. Okay. So what does the poet mean by those that go searching for love only make manifest their own lovelessness? Well, when you seek something, you feel that you're striving for it is missing from your life. Does that make sense? If it's love, for example, then what you're really saying is, I'm experiencing lovelessness, and in my seeking, I hope to fill this void. But the problem with this approach is that rather than filling the love void, it only puts you further out of balance, and lovelessness continues to be your experience. Why? Because you weighted more in lovelessness than in lovingness. Your thoughts are focused on finding what's missing, while your desire is for love to flow into your life. You see that discrepancy there? This kind of misalignment continues to attract more of what's missing. What you're thinking about is the love that's not there. The universe cooperates by matching up vibrationally with precisely what you're thinking about. How does the universe know to do this? Well, it's merely matching its vibration to your thoughts through the law of attraction. You need to turn off the searchlights and dismiss the search party, and instead replace them with an energy of loving thoughts, an internal knowing about receiving love. You originated from a place of spirit that's defined by love. When you begin rebalancing your life so that your desire and the way you think and behave are a loving partnership, you'll realize that your desire is really God realization. The longing for love is a longing to become more like God in your thoughts. With this awareness, you soon realize that searching outside of yourself, not for what you already are, searching outside of yourself for what you already are is the ultimate folly. No one else can give this to you. As D.H. Lawrence says, the loveless never find love. This is because the loveless are focused on not having what they desire rather than on what they already are. Okay? Furthermore, the loveless believe that they're unworthy of the love they desire. And guess what? They continue to attract more evidence of their unworthiness. With the searchlights turned off and the one-person search party given a permanent rest, you can turn your attention to balancing the authentic means at your disposal for receiving abundant love. This, then, is the irony summed up perfectly in the poet's conclusion that Only the loving find love, and they never have to seek for it. Okay, subtitle, Becoming the Love. As the title of this chapter suggests, my definition of love goes beyond the admittedly delicious lust and excitement that you experience when you first become infatuated. Ultimately, these inflamed passions fade away, and what remains is authentic love, or the balance you're seeking. And what is a prime example of this? It is to love as God does, to extend the caring that defines your very creation outward, whenever and wherever possible. Love of this nature leads you to forget about your own ego and want what you desire for yourself even more for another. This is how the act of creation seems to work. Your Creator doesn't ask anything from you in exchange for giving you life. It's given freely and abundantly, and no one is excluded. You don't have to repay God for giving you this life, or the air you need in order to live, or the water you drink for your very existence, or the sun that sustains you. Without any of those freely given ingredients, you wouldn't continue to live. This is the love that God offers you. To balance your life with more lovingness, you need to match your thoughts and behaviors with those of your source, being love in the way that God is. This means noticing when you're inclined to judge yourself or others as though you or they are unworthy of love. This means suspending your need to be right in favor of being kind toward yourself and others, and deliberately extending kindness everywhere. This means giving love to yourself and others rather than demanding love. This means your loving gesture of kindness is heartfelt because you feel love flowing from within, not because you want something in return. A tall order? Not really, unless you believe that it's going to be difficult. Lovingness is a feature of your natural state, and your ego isn't a part of that state. Ego dominates because you've separated yourself from your God self, the loving self that came here from a place of perfectly divine, unconditional love. You've carried this ego idea of your own self-importance, your need to be right, for so long that you've deluded yourself into believing that the ego self is who you are. Talk about being out of balance. We've opted for a belief in pure illusion by allowing this illusion to be the dominant force we've created through our ego-centered self, a heavy imbalance in life. The result is that I want to feel love, the real thing, the love that is the very essence of my being, the love that I am. But I feel emptiness instead of lovingness. Why is this so? Because the emptiness can only be filled with love by opening my heart connection to the spirit of love that originates you not know where, but can be felt from within. It's my empty space, no one else's. Therefore, only I can fill it. Our objective is to ask love within me to make its presence known, to have an awareness of being so full of love that this is what I have to give away. That's beautiful, right? That's all you have to do. Ask and receive. By doing just that, you'll attract more of what you're giving away. Subtitle, You Can Only Give Away What You Have Inside. The restoration of this imbalance is dependent upon your willingness to reconnect to your source of being and become an instrument of love. You must vow from this moment forward to see yourself exclusively in loving terms and to invite love to accompany you 24/7. Here's an affirmation to help keep you on this path. Holy Spirit, guide me now. I love that. That's very simple. Okay, so he goes on to say, this simple, powerful statement aligns you with love. Self-contempt or self-rejection cannot distort your balance. You only have love to give away. When you give contempt or rejection to yourself or others, you're a vibrational match to these energies, and they'll continue to appear in your life. Many people blame others or an unloving, uncaring world for the lack of love they're receiving in comparison to what they desire. Any disparity that exists between the love you desire and what you actually receive is a mirror image, a reflection of what you're thinking. Give away hate and you receive hate. Give away love and it has come to streaming into your life. And it has come. And it has to come streaming into your life. Having trouble with him. Imagine a container the size of your heart. This container is the sole source of all thoughts. Whenever you think something, you must go to this container, select a thought, and send it out to the world. Using this metaphor, the real issue isn't about simply selecting positive, loving thoughts and having your world shift back into balance. The real issue is what's in the container. That is, what's in the heart reservoir you have inside of you to give to others. This container within is connected to an endless supply of love. You need only turn your thoughts to that source to be filled with love. Love for yourself, love for the world, love for life, love for all others, and most significantly, love for your source of being. Then this is all that you'll have available to give away, and consequently, all that returns to you. It's been said that the difference between all of us living at ordinary levels of human consciousness and those we call saints is that they never forget God even for a single moment. They're cheerful when life is difficult, patient when others are impatient, and loving when others respond with hatred. Why? Because of that container. Ordinary people have a container out of which they pluck loving thoughts in certain circumstances. The saint has an internal vessel that contains nothing else, out of which and into which love flows freely. So rather than working on simply changing your thoughts in order to become more peaceful and loving, why not shoot for the moon and think like the saint that you are? Focus on that container within when you continually say, Holy Spirit, guide me now. You'll see your container overflowing with so many loving thoughts that it's impossible for negativity in any form to alter the balance within. Subtitle, What Love Looks Like Through the Eyes of a Child. Here are some jewels describing what love is from the perspective of a group of 4 to 8-year-olds. As you work to reset the love balance beam of your life, consider these refreshing thoughts on what love is. Number 1, when someone loves you, the way they say your name is different. You just know your name is safe in their mouth. Number 2, love is when you go out to eat and give somebody most of your French fries without making them give you any of theirs. Number 3, love is when my daddy makes coffee for my mommy and he takes a sip before giving it to her to make sure it tastes okay. Number 4, love is when mommy gives daddy the best piece of chicken. Number 5, during my piano recital, I was on stage and I was scared. I looked at all the people watching me and saw my daddy waving and smiling. He was the only one. I wasn't scared anymore. And my favorite, he says, love is what's in the room with you at Christmas if you stop opening presents and listen. There you have it. Look within and around. Listen. Love is what's left over when falling in love fades away, because love is an endless source. Give it away. Share your French fries. Give someone the best piece of chicken. Wave and smile to the universe, and you'll soon know what Victor Hugo meant when he observed, love is the reduction of the universe to a single being. Not only is love what's left over when falling in love fades away, but love defines the source from which we came. Elizabeth Barrett Browning poetically describes the end of life as a return to pure love. She says, guess Guess now who holds thee? Death, I said. But there the silver answer rang. Not death, but love. And so it seems that love is truly all that's left over when this body falls away as well. Okay? So those are the readings for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us and staying with us on a Wednesday night. We're going to continue to do Wednesday nights online for a while, even though we are beginning to meet in person outside. We'll give those parameters on an email. That's going to be starting Sunday, July 5th, same time, 10:30 a.m. So be watching your emails for more information. Do you like my t-shirt here? Chris Kinney found that for me. Thank you, Chris. Happy day, everybody. Thank you so much. Namaste.